Okay, so today's lesson is reviewing two types of changes, and what I like to call them is inside changes versus outside changes. So I've explained this to a few of you, and it seemed to be helpful in your projects and with this unit, so I'm just going to make a video explaining like this way of thinking about transformations. Okay, so we have a function. In this case, our original parent function is the absolute value of x. Y equals the absolute value of x. That parent function looks like a giant V. That's our absolute value function. Now we're going to start applying transformations. So two of the most important types of transformations are inside changes and outside changes. So that means we're adding or subtracting a number either inside the function or outside the function. So for example, here we have a function with the absolute value symbol, and this is what I would call an outside change. And I'm calling it an outside change because this -5 is outside of the function, right? So here's the function. This -5 is added on at the end. It's outside of the operation of the function. It's outside of the absolute value symbols. So because it's an outside change, it's going to affect the output, or it's going to create a vertical shift. So that's going to be kind of the key thing to remember, and we'll take notes on it in a second, is an outside change results in a vertical shift of the function. So in this case, it's -5, so it's going to go down by 5 units. Outside change, vertical shift. Okay. Okay. So again, we have our function. In this case, the parent function is y equals 2 to the power of x. It's an exponential function, looks like this. We saw a lot of these last unit. And the change, again, is an outside change. At the end of the function, or outside of the function, we have this -4. So same thing, we're going to shift down. Oops, did not mean to do that. We're going to shift down by 4 units. Outside change results in a vertical shift, in this case, a shift down by 4 units. Okay, so now we have a new function, y equals the cube root of x, which creates, it's the parent function that looks like this, like an S, kind of. And this is an inside change. What I mean by that is the +3 is inside of the function. It's inside of the operation. So because this +3 is inside, it's an inside change, it's going to result in a horizontal shift. So it's the opposite of what we were looking at before. It's going to be a horizontal shift. In this case, it's +3. So it's going to shift 3 units to the left. It's always going to be the opposite for an inside change. So if it's +3, it's shifting 3 units to the left. Okay, let's take some quick notes before we do a few more examples. So we have a function. I recommend like just writing this down on a piece of paper to keep close by, because this is like one of the most important things that will keep coming up again and again this unit. So it'll be good just to have it written down somewhere so you don't have to hold it in your brain. We have a function okay. So our function is f of x. Let's stick with the absolute value example. So we have f of x equals the absolute value of x. That is our original, or our parent function. We then have, let's do this in blue, we have an inside change. So, okay. So let's pretend that in here is like -2. This is going to be an inside change because it's inside the function. So let's go ahead and label this to remind ourselves it's inside. Oops. Okay, so because it's inside, it's going to lead to, so hopefully you remember, an inside change is going to lead to a horizontal shift. So it's going to shift either left or right, horizontally. Horizon. An inside change leads to a horizontal shift. Okay, and then let's also add an example of an outside change. Say at the end we had like +3. So this is a change that's outside of the function. So we're going to label this as an outside change. And we should remember that an outside change will always lead to the opposite, to a vertical shift. So it'll either shift up or down when there's a transformation on the outside of the function. Okay, so I'm going to screenshot this so I can save it. And I want you to keep this written down somewhere because you don't want to be like trying to figure it out every time you're doing your project. You just want to be like that to be automatic and to remember. So keep these notes somewhere. Okay, let's do one more. Is this an inside change or an outside change? So is the transformation being added inside the function or outside the function? It is inside the function, so it's going to result in an inside change, results in a horizontal shift. So it's going to be shifting either left or right. It's going to shift horizontally, and because it's +5, it's going to go to the left by 5 because the inside changes, the sign flips, so it's opposite. Okay, hopefully this was helpful. This is going to be a really important skill for your project, and say this is like the most important transformation to know for the unit. So remember, inside changes, outside changes. Inside changes are inside the function, create a horizontal shift. Outside changes are outside the function, and they create a vertical shift. I hope this is helpful.